Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I am so excited and happy to be here with Sean, one of the singers from Glom. Welcome, brother.
Hey, how's it going? How we doing?
So we are by way of Washington, D.C., and now Brooklyn, New York. Let's talk about the history of the band. Let's go back to the days in DC. And I guess you started out as a cover or in a cover band before Glom ever existed, correct?
Yeah, so I've been playing music for man, like at this point probably like I started playing music in public when I was like 12, maybe 11. And I was just like playing in like churches and stuff like that. And then in high school I started we decided to start a Beatles cover band, and like we were strictly Beatles covers, and we would perform at this it was a Haagen-Dazs. We would perform at a Haagen-Dazs every Saturday, or every Friday or every Saturday in the summer, like starting in like May until like August. And so the person that I started that cover band with, we ended up starting Glom together 10 years, no, not 10 years later, like 2016,
Okay.
2017. And it's funny because at one point the Beatles cover band, the core Beatles cover band wasn't all in Glom, but then there was a point where all the we had like fill-in people for the Beatles cover band when like people would go on vacation or whatever. And there was a point where everyone that was in that Beatles cover band was also in Glom for a second, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So favorite Beatles song to play when you were in the band?
Man, I mean, obviously like the Beatles hits are hits for a reason, but I really liked some of the deep cuts. Like we would play a lot of their catalog. My favorite song personally to play was this song called I've Got a Feeling. I don't know if you know that one, but not really a famous song. But I mean, it's a Beatles song, like, so it's famous enough. But that song was my favorite to play for sure.
Have you gotten to see him, or well, obviously, have you gotten to see him or any of the former
No,
Beatles play?
no, I've never. I feel like I have a very, so not to get too far off track, but
No, you're good.
I'm have a real I had a real obsession with Bruce Springsteen too. And then I made like a conscious decision where I will not see them live, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like I do not want to see Bruce or Paul McCartney live, because I feel like it will ruin my interpretation, like what I like hold them to be in my mind. I don't want to like taint it with like seeing something and it not being like completely, I've legitimately overplayed Beatles songs and overplayed Paul McCartney songs and overplayed Bruce Springsteen songs to the point where I can't listen to it anymore. And I don't want to ruin that by going to see it and then it not being the same.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
completely understand that. And you are not the only person in the world that I think feels that, especially when bands and artists get like to that age too, where you're talking 30, 40 years past their prime, quote
Right.
unquote. And
Right.
I will say I did get to see Paul McCartney pre-pandemic.
Okay.
And he played like 3 hours. It was amazing, like
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. Blackbird has always been one of my favorites of theirs.
Nice. It's a great song.
But yeah, so and Bruce Springsteen, I got to see. I was never a big fan of Bruce Springsteen. I have to admit, I just
Uh-huh.
never connected. But after seeing him live, ironically enough, I kind
Yeah.
of got it then, But you're in a different boat, so it's a different situation. But so living in DC, then
Mm-hmm.
starting a band, being in a cover band, how did you balance, like still trying to make a living and doing the band thing?
Well, I was fortunate enough at a certain point. So I've been in a lot of bands like throughout my life now. And I was in several. I would play a lot of, like, after high school I started playing um in like a regionally touring band,
Oh, okay.
and we would play like up and down the East Coast, and then I would also get gigs like locally playing bass for people. And so I was fortunate enough at that point in time. I was still living with my parents as well, but like my that was my job. Like I didn't really do anything else. And I'll tell you right now, like, you play those cover gigs, it's money, you know. It's definitely more money than you'd make if you were in like a real original band. Um, and so I would just do gigs like that a lot, you know. Like I would do bar gigs and stuff like that. Like from when I after I turned 21, I remember like playing. There was a streak where I would play a bar gig. Man, I mean like 4 or 5 nights a week, you know,
Yeah.
and those pay well. So, you know,
Yeah, you were hustling, brother. So yeah, so then going back to DC. Oh, I think I lost you. We'll wait for him. We're good. There
you
you are.
back?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
no worries, man. Continue.
Um, and then after a certain point, the person the person that I like initially started Glom with had moved. We grew up together. We started the Beatles cover band together. We lived in the same place. He moved to New York in 2014, and that was the point when I didn't move here for a long time, but I would come up here and we would work on songs and stuff like that. And then like when we started the band, everyone else lived here. So I it took me a long time to move up, but uh
Just
that
because of living with the family or girlfriend or like just
no, I
what?
mean, I don't know. I don't exactly know what the reason was. Like at the tail end there, like my girlfriend that I live with now, that we moved up together. Um it's kind of funny, we moved to New York on February 29th, 2020. And
3 weeks later. Yeah.
well, it's crazy because I don't know what
Oh,
it was
20.
like out.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
No, yeah, for sure. I don't
Yeah.
know if it like what it was like outside of New York, but like all that stuff started happening. Like it got started getting really serious here like 3 days later.
Yeah.
Like people were taking it very seriously. But whatever, we don't have to talk about.
Right.
But I I think that I don't know. I the last place I lived before I moved to New York was Baltimore, and you know
Love, hate.
no,
Oh,
it's definitely a love because
oh, I
it's
love
just
Baltimore
had
too. Yeah.
it just has like a special energy to
Mhm.
it that people don't really understand unless they've been there. Like there it gets painted in a bad light a lot.
I agree.
Um but conversely, um New York is definitely more lively, if that makes sense, but it's more expensive. So that's the big trade-off.
And more opportunities, you would assume, correct?
Yeah. I would definitely say so.
Yeah. So living in Baltimore, how long did you live in Baltimore then?
Um, Probably about like actually living there about like 2 years or so.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, that was when came up here.
And how
Yeah.
was the music scene getting into bars and clubs and stuff like that in Baltimore compared to DC?
Well, here's what I'll say. The Baltimore music scene, I, this is maybe a little blasphemous, but I think that the DC music scene is very dominated by like it's bigger acts.
Mhm.
Like the majority, as far as I'm like my experience, like a mid-level tier or like a mid-level act, like even like lower mid-level, like what I consider Glom to be, it's not easy for a band like that to go to DC because you there's amazing clubs there. Like the whole IMP like 930 like family is an amazing that like they do it the best in my opinion,
Yep.
but it's
Seth
harder to get
Hurwitz,
in.
right?
Was
Yeah.
that? Yep.
Seth Hurwitz. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's hard to get in there because all the other clubs in my opinion like aren't nearly on the same level. So it's hard. So like a lot of like bands that I really liked would go to Baltimore instead. So and play. There's a venue there that is called the Auto Bar
Yeah.
that like people would go to, and then like also there was like DIY style shows that also were a lot of fun because of the DIY energy and the DC music scene. I feel like well, also this is the thing. Growing up in DC, there is like a level of sterility that doesn't um that's kind of hard to describe unless you've like you grew up in like the DC area or the counties whatever because there's like a there's just like a level of like I don't know. It's government. It's a government energy there that like doesn't really exist anywhere else. And every time like I meet someone in New York that's also from there or currently lives there, they you can't not acknowledge that fact. Like you go to like where for every time we play in DC, it's like there's just a very specific vibe on the street that doesn't exist anywhere else compared to like I mean, the New York street is obviously just like a whole nother thing, like
Right.
your average New York street. But like in DC, it's a very specific thing. Like everyone kind of looks alike, and it's all because like it's a government thing, like a very like cut and dry kind of thing. And all the restaurants and bars kind of have that same vibe, which isn't a bad thing at all. I'm not trying to neg it. I'm just saying that it's specific.
It's niche. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Interesting. So, so then, like you said, you make this, huge leap. In your mind, it sounds like to go to New York to move to Brooklyn. How was that process? Getting, like finding a place, doing all that. Like the life stuff.
Right. What's interesting is my girlfriend and I didn't come up and look at any places, like any apartments. Like my friend was the one that went to the apartment that we currently live in now. And so
Oh wow.
we've lived in the same building since. Like it's been 4 years, And he was the one that found like, well, I found the listing, he went and looked at it, and then I was the one that talked to the landlord and like convinced him, even though it was like pretty hard because none of us we didn't have jobs or anything. But as far as the leap goes, it was a interesting time to move here because I remember like I moved here and I didn't have a job and my girlfriend didn't have a job, and then we I ended up finding a job in like uh it was like mid-March, and then the first day of the job was the day before the city closed, and then so that was interesting, and then just kind of hung out for 4 months, and then went back. Then like the city reopened, and then now we're here. But it was
Did you
a
write music during that time, or what did you do in that 4 months?
we so we had a record.
Yep.
Our second record is called Merit,
Yep.
and we had worked on that in 2019, and then so in March 2020 that was when we were mixing it. So it was interesting because we had all this music to put out.
Yeah.
And then like what was interesting was that we are the person like my dear friend who is the one who has produced every Glom song.
Mm-hmm.
He has a studio in New York, of course, his own private studio, and we were essentially just kind of bored, and then we went in there and just kind of worked on more songs, which became the next EP that was put out.
Right.
But it was just interesting because like prior to COVID pandemic happening, we had this really beautiful project that we were so proud of and excited about. And at that point in time, we were still the full band. It was still like 6 people, like
Yeah.
all like kind of like chiming in and stuff like that. And so it was a real special thing. And then COVID happened, and then like because of that, like everyone kind of left. the band, you know, and so yeah, I don't know.
You had to basically start again, right? Yeah.
Start again. Yep.
So let's talk about Merit. I want to know what the thinking, or was it just by chance that all of the song titles on that album are one word?
Well, I would say what's interesting about it is that um I don't like when things specifically with songs. I okay, this is obviously a potentially loaded statement, and I don't want to like say that I don't, I like music that's long. I like music that is, has like tension and builds and stuff like that. But for Glom, I've always felt like when I started the band, I really wanted, because like the name is so like punchy, and so I wanted all the songs to be like punchy, and all that, and that even boils down to the titles of the songs. So I was like, what is the most memorable thing in my opinion? What was the most memorable thing for a band that no one knows is to just have these like really like you know fiery titles that are just one word.
Yeah.
Um, kind of since gone away from that a little bit, but at the same time, most of the songs are still just one word titles. And on the record that I'm working on right now, everything's one one word again. So
Okay.
uh yeah.
So let's talk about the name. Like, what, why, how did we come up with Glom?
So I was reading this book called Meet Me in the Bathroom, which is about the New York music scene in 2000, like the last wave of indie rock in New York, whatever.
The Strokes,
Um,
yeah, 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 is
the
like that.
Strokes,
Yep,
exactly.
yep.
And there was a section about the Strokes that um like the line was, even before they were a band, anytime they would go out in public, people would glom onto them. That was like the quote. And I really liked the Strokes. In high school, we used to play Strokes covers and stuff like that. And so I read that line, and it stuck out because I'd never seen that word before, and I said, that's a cool word. And at that time we didn't have a name, and the working title of the band that we had was called Coffee, and I thought that that was a cool name too.
Hmm.
But yeah, it took a long time to find the name, and then that passage stuck out, and I like the name. I think it looks cool, and that's it.
So here's my take on the Strokes. I absolutely love the Strokes. I've seen them live. They are absolutely fantastic. But I am scared to death that I will get a notification on my phone that like he's like gone too soon. Like he just seems like one of those tortured artists that just, I don't know, like
Yeah.
kind of like Ryan Adams, kind of like, like,
Well, I'll tell you right now that I've seen him in person multiple times, like not at shows. Like I've seen him like in public. He's come into the store that I work at a couple times.
oh wow.
Something's like not right. I don't know. It doesn't, I don't know. Maybe it's just like part of his persona or whatever, but like he's just like kind of not, I don't want to get blasted for this, but he's not very nice. And I think that, and I don't think that it's like on purpose. I think that like just
That's just his personality.
something's working, something's eating away. But yeah, I don't know. I've never really told that story. Like I keep those stories like to myself most times online. Like, but I've seen him. He's come in. I've seen him a bunch. And he used to live like down the street from where I work, so I would see him like walking around all the time.
Yeah. But that does not surprise me. That does not.
Yeah. I also seen Albert Hammond a lot too, because I work in the Lower East Side, so I see him. I see there's a lot of celebrities just walking around, but Albert Hammond is always around.
Yeah.
And well, he when he is in town, and I've seen him, he looks totally fine. It's
His
just, I don't
solo
know.
stuff is so good.
Yeah, it's very nice. Very
Yeah.
nice stuff.
Yeah. So, how do you, as a musician, how do you like to listen to music? Are you like a headphones guy? Are you like a, record player? Like what's your ideal situation how to listen to music?
It's kind of funny because recently I've noticed that when anytime I'm in like a recording mode, which is
Hmm.
currently, which happens probably about once a year, where I'm working on a new batch of songs. Um, I don't really find myself listening to music at all. Um, I don't know what it is. I think it's probably just I don't want subconsciously I don't want anything to seep in and like end up copying it,
Hmm.
which is a fear of mine.
Yep.
Um, but I would say that like right now I'm not listening to music at all. But when I'm not in those moods, I this is kind of funny. Like I have this like pretty it's like a Crossley. And like I know that people, in the hi-fi world and like record like vinyl collectors and stuff like that, like don't approve of those because they damage the record, like, but I don't know. I feel like I subscribe to this notion that that was probably the way that a lot of people listened to music back in the day. And I think that there's a authentic nature about like how a vinyl record sounds on a shitty machine or a shitty vinyl player rather than like a real hi-fi setup, because like that's not like what the people were listening to. And I find that the same way with iPhones. Like a lot of times like I'll just listen to music off the speaker of the iPhone rather than headphones, because like I don't know, one time I was working with this producer who was he's kind of a famous 90s producer, which is funny. He like did like the song Bitch
Yeah,
by Meredith Brooks.
of
He
course.
produced that song and mixed that
I'm
song,
a
and it's a
bitch.
really,
I'm a
yeah,
lover.
great
Yeah,
song.
yeah.
But he was funny because he said that one of the mix tests that he does now is just off the iPhone speaker, because he's like a lot of people listen to music off the iPhone speaker. So if it sounds good like that way, then it'll sound good on like a hi-fi. And that just really stuck with me like 10 years ago. And I've been listening. I listen, I mean, with anytime I'm listening to a Glom mix or a Glom demo, it's just like always off the phone
Right.
rather than with headphones or anything.
That's
I don't
yeah.
know.
That's interesting. That's interesting. For me, it really depends on the music and it really depends on the artist. Like
Right.
I love headphones, but sometimes like, you want more of a expansive experience where it's off your head. Like
Mhm.
you know what I mean. So it's interesting how that works. But
I also really like, honestly,
yeah,
not, another thing that people, audio people like that I know would scoff at, but I really like listening to music off like the air, like the earbuds that just come with the phone, with the
mm,
iPhone. Like I think that those speakers are honestly really good, or those headphones are like really good for what they are. They're $20 speaker or headphones, but
yep,
it's pretty mid-range heavy. And I think that like, I don't know, for me, I prefer flat. Like I don't really like when there's too much bass in a audio or like in a speaker setup,
yeah,
because I don't think that it's like an accurate mix or an accurate way to listen to the music, because everything's like would be all weird. But like just listening to it on like a flat, like neutral environment is kind of better, in my
yeah.
opinion.
I
I don't
have
know.
I have my dad's record player and his
Mhm.
speakers, and so they're probably from the 60s, I would assume, or like early 70s. And like the volume on both speakers, if you want both speakers to work,
Yep.
the volume can only be at 5 or at 8. Any other
Hey,
like volume like that right speaker just doesn't work.
right.
But
That's
it
hey,
sounds like you're right. It's a different sound.
yeah.
But so let's get back into songwriting. And since you're currently working, I want to talk about this as well.
All
So
right.
are you more of a music first, or are you more of a lyrics first? Or really does it depend on the song, or does it depend on the album, or give me a little headspace on that?
I don't think that I've ever done lyric first. Like I someone else asked me this recently, um, at one of the shows, and I don't think that I've been writing songs since I was like 12 years old, and
Mhm.
I do not think that I've ever done lyric first, like legitimately ever. And so what's funny is that I've been thinking about, I don't know, for some reason with the other Glom records, I don't like really I know how I wrote all those songs. Like I legit like remember exactly what the moment was and what what circumstances
Inspiration.
were around that. I remember everything with those, with this new set of songs, it's very strange because somehow or another it has accumulated into being 10, potentially 11 songs. And I don't really recall those coming to me or the inspiration around them. Like there's one song that I like legitimately remember. The song is called Virginia, and we've been playing it live for the show that you were at. We played it at whatever. um I remember distinctly when I wrote that song and how I wrote that song, because we played a show um in Pennsylvania, and there was a secret headliner. I knew who it was because my buddy booked, like, made the show, booked it, whatever. But the secret headliner was Alex G. And so this is a story. So Alex G is exactly my age, right? And he's from Philly. So like I remember when, and I'm obviously from the DC area, and when I was younger, like people would in like high school, people were talking about him, and like, because he had just put out his first like stuff, and they're like, oh, like this like DIY guy is like really sick. And then no like real music publications was writing about him. It was just people like word of mouth kind of talking about him. And I remember like listening to it, and I was like, it's okay. Like it's not like my thing. Um, but again, like the ethos and the ethics, like, or his like work ethic behind it was very inspiring to me, even though I didn't like his music. And I didn't, like, quite frankly, I just didn't get it at that time, because I also liked the stuff that was inspired, like was influencing him. So I was really big into Elliott Smith, and really big into like I don't know, Modest Mouse and Duster and stuff like that at that point in time in my life. And then we played the show where he was the secret headliner, and I saw him live, and I was this is like, he's the best. I like legit, like it flipped on in my
The
head.
fanboy. Yeah.
Like I was like, this is insane, like how good he is. It's like a in ineffable thing. Like it was like something that I couldn't like really describe why I felt that way, but I was like so blown away by like seeing him live. And again, that's not to say that I didn't, like, at that point in time there was records that he put out that I really really liked, but I was like, I wasn't inspired to go see him, like whatever. And then seeing that show, I was like, this is insane. Like it was just him like with an acoustic guitar, not his like full stage show that he does now. It was just like kind of stripped down,
Mm.
and I was completely blown away. And then I came home, and then I wrote the song Virginia like literally like the next day, and like demoed it out and everything. And it was just kind of like me trying to write an Alex G song. It doesn't sound like an Alex G song at all, but like it just was like that. And that's the only song of this set that I remember writing. And then everything else is like kind of like lost in the ether.
So yeah, for people who aren't familiar with his sound, how would you describe his sound?
It's funny because like his music, you can really pinpoint every inspiration. In my opinion, you can pinpoint everything that inspired him to write the song, but it doesn't sound, it's just like a slightly altered version in a better way of what
Okay.
like the thing he's like kind of um uh emulating or whatever. But it's like it's very like 90s slacker rock, like Pavement. There's some Built to Spill energy in there. There's stuff like that. And then he has a lot of music that's like kind of like off the wall, like not avant-garde, but it's like kind of like weirdo pop music.
Like Animal Collective weirdo, or not that weird? Like
It's not
Lips?
that weird, but it's
Okay.
like, what was the other one you said?
Flaming Lips?
No, I would say that it's even like more bizarre. Like there's like certain like sound choices that he uses where
Okay.
it's like a perfectly normal song, and then like there's like a synthesizer that sounds like it's from Zelda, like for kind of no reason. But then you see it, and then like you listen to it a couple more times, and you're like, oh, like this is, I couldn't imagine any other sound that
Yeah,
this would be,
I gotcha. So
It's
are
hard to
you?
describe his music, in my opinion.
That's
And
fine. That's fine.
and showing his music to people that aren't into him is difficult, because
Okay.
it's not for everyone.
So are you a gamer? Or are you a
No,
not
not
at
at
all?
all. I From a young age, I grew up in the probably the golden era of video games, like the 90s. 90s, mid 2000s was like, the first Xbox and like stuff like that. And like all my friends would get Xboxes and we would play Xbox and or PlayStation and whatever. And I remember like from a very young age, like always getting headaches, like extreme headaches from playing those games. It didn't really happen so much with like Nintendo stuff. Like I remember Nintendo 64, like we played that and be fine, but it was like with like Xbox, PlayStation games like Halo and stuff like that, it would just destroy me and I would get migraines like when I was a kid. And so now I'm not a gamer at all, but I still appreciate it. I think the culture behind it is pretty interesting. I like Tetris a lot. Like
So
I play Tetris on my phone.
do like light shows and then like concerts, does that bother you then, or
No,
okay?
not at all. It's like pure like it was like I think that this is the same thing because I can't watch The Simpsons either. Um, I think that it's just a combination of like the types of TVs from that time and the frame rate of certain things. This is a completely niche like theory that I've not is not proven. I don't have any like proof about this, but I remember like when I was a kid watching The Simpsons, and every time I watched The Simpsons, I would get a migraine. And it was because I think it was because of the way that it's animated, or like the early like pre 2010s not digital Simpsons, and it was the same experience with video games.
That's crazy. Yeah,
But
that's
it doesn't happen anywhere else. Like now, like when I watch like watching TV at home, now nothing happens. Not that bad. It's just pure video games.
interesting. So I want to talk about three particular songs. And two of them actually I think are off Merits. So let's talk about Matches first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matches is off Merit. Yep.
Yep.
Um, this song, it is just like I would describe it as kind of like a slow burner with this breathy voice, and then that
Yep.
guitar solo, man. Like I want to dive into this song and how that came about.
Okay. So I it's funny because I don't I'm not a fan of Weezer now. Like I don't like modern Weezer. I would still okay, like I'm gonna say right now, I would play if they said, hey, let's open because White Reaper opened for them, so that's why it was a
Yeah, yeah.
crazy,
Six
if
degrees of
they
separation.
exactly if
Yeah.
they're like, hey, like go on, you're coming on tour with us because we're doing Pinkerton again, I would be like 100%. Like it was, I mean, you can't fault them for getting the bag because they needed, the music industry is hard and they cracked the code because they're still killing it. But I don't like the new music. That song Matches was me trying to write a song off Pinkerton,
That's
and
brilliant.
I
I love it.
love Pinkerton. I think that Pinkerton is I like Pinkerton more than Blue Album, but I still like the Blue Album. But Pinkerton to me is a perfect record, and I wanted to write a song that sounded like a song off Pinkerton, and so that's what that song ended up being. And it's funny because the vocalist on that song is no longer in the band, and so it's an interesting dichotomy because people really like that song, and I don't feel able to perform it anymore. And we also at the same time when we were playing it, we it just never really like translated as well as the record of it.
Okay.
Like the recording of it, in my opinion, is like a perfect uh thing.
I agree. It's produced like the sound is really good. Yeah.
Yeah, he went off on that one. But maybe we'll bring it back. I was thinking, because like I was thinking about it. Because this is the thing, I wrote the song just so I feel like I could sing it well,
Mhm.
but these days I don't know. I don't know if I could perform it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
But I like that song. I still do.
Yeah, you should. And you wrote it.
Well, thanks.
The other song I want to talk about is the self-titled Merits.
Uh-huh.
I love the 60s vibe and the harmony. You guys don't harmonize a lot, but when you do, I feel like it's very well placed and timely. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Talk about that song and like that, how that came about.
So I don't exactly know what the direct inspiration of that, like the vibe of the track is supposed to be, because
But do you get that? Is it fair to say like it's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
this kind of vibe? Yeah.
No, I like that track. We haven't played it in 3 years because for some reason I don't know what it is. I felt very strongly about that track, about that song when I initially wrote it. It's weird when you like look back on things now, because to me like it was like, oh, like we just put that album out like last week, but it's been 3 years, and quite frankly not a lot of people appreciated that song, so that's why I was like, okay, whatever. I think that at that time I thought that was one of my best songs like I'd ever written, and I just wanted, I don't know, I despite the fact that I like Bruce Springsteen, like I'm obsessed with Bruce Springsteen, I don't really like the narrative style of singing, or like the narrative style of songwriting. I don't like storytelling in
Yep.
songs because maybe it's because I don't feel like I can do it, which is why I avoid it. But that song, for whatever reason, is um a narrative. And I, at that point in time, like I was feeling very low and I was driving, and those lyrics, the again, going back to the melody first, or song music first versus lyric first, that was a definite music first, and I was working on it. Like I had like the melody, and then I remember writing the melody, writing the like the guitar parts and stuff like that. And this was like in on the, so let me paint the picture. So this was like, I remember 9 a.m. I like was working on the track, and then at 11 I had to go drive somewhere to go see my dad perform. He was like he was singing in the choir, and I was driving to the performance, and it was like about 2 hours away, and I wrote all the lyrics based off of that drive. And then when I got home, I finished the demo with the words, and then we recorded it like 6 months later. And that's, I don't know. And that one did turn out well, I would say.
Yeah, I think you should have the confidence to break that one out again, man. I really do. I Not that I have any say in anything, but you know.
No, I think that, it's interesting because I feel like there is a, if we played it now with the current lineup in the band, it would definitely sound probably closer to the way that I imagined it when I wrote it, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think it could work. But it's like it's an interesting thing to think about when you try to bring back old songs, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's, before we get into the final song, you kind of brought this up. So let's talk about your family, like parents, sisters, brothers, like anyone else musical in the family. Like where do you feel like this inspiration and this career came from?
Well, it's funny because my dad is a classically trained vocalist, and he went to school for music education. So he was a, like at one point in his life he was like a vocal teacher, like a choir teacher, and he was in schools and stuff like that teaching choir. And he is primarily a pianist, but he taught me how to play guitar when I was 11, and then kind of just took it from there. So the inspiration is from that. Like realistically speaking, he taught me how to play, and then he kind of taught me how to sing. I don't know. I don't like this is, I don't like the way that, I'm not a fan of the way that people who are classically trained vocalists sing. Like I don't like it. I don't think that it sounds good.
It,
And
it sounds fake sometimes, doesn't it? Like,
it's a sterile thing where I'm
yeah,
like, this is not
agree.
like a real,
Mhm.
there's no emotion behind this, and that bugs me. So I
It's
don't like,
bombast. Yeah, it's
yeah,
more bombast and like over the top. Yeah.
it's definitely over the top. And so he taught me how to sing like that, which is, obviously it's, this is the thing, that technique definitely works like as far as a recording standpoint, I'm not gonna sing like that. Like when I sing the way that
Ever.
I'll sing in recording, like on the record. But like sometimes like on if we have stretches of shows or like on a tour and like I throw out my voice, you have to sing like that in order to survive and not like get sick, you know? Like you have to support with, the technically correct way to sing,
Yeah.
which I appreciate knowing how to do because like for example, quite frankly, at that White Reaper show, I had already thrown out my voice, so I had to sing a little differently than I usually do.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that was like 5 shows in 7 nights or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last song I want to talk about is one of the most current songs, Pebble.
Okay.
Let's talk about first the video.
Mm-hmm.
Um, inspiration behind it. How long did that take? Like, what was the process involved with all of that?
So
Fascinated by that.
I wrote that song by I was really, I mean, I'm a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. Like I appreciate everything that they've done in you know, in their career, in their very long career. And I wanted to write a song that would have sounded like, from a songwriting perspective, sound like it would fit in with um um
Melancholy?
well, the recording ended up sounding like a melancholy song, but I wanted it to be a Siamese Dream song. So like the envision that
Okay,
I had was much louder, like much like
gotcha.
heavier. Like my top 10 favorite songs of all time, like one of them is Mayonnaise, which is not, obviously I feel like it's kind of a cliche to be like, oh, like it's like an alternative band that likes mayonnaise,
Yeah.
but I wanted to make a song that sounded like that and like song from a songwriting perspective. And then when we were recording it, the producer Sahil, who's I've mentioned earlier in this talk, he wanted to make it really like just dreamy instead, and I think that it turned out great. But that recording was what inspired the video artist to he came up with that idea all himself. Like we've worked with him since the beginning of the band.
Hmm.
He has done a lot of videos, primarily more electronic, like data mosh style videos. Like there was another video for the song 1221 that he also made. His name's Raleigh, and he had never done. I like the data mosh style because like my whole uh ethos behind it when we started the band, I was like, I don't want anything to look like it costs money.
Yeah.
Like I was obsessed with that
Like
idea.
DIY. Yep,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
don't want anything that is expensive looking, or like I want it to be like very clear that it's like, oh, we made this ourselves, you know, which for better or for worse, like helps. I don't know. I don't know if it actually helps, but he wanted to do a video that was like a live action video, like filming, like real filming, and he had never done one before. And then like basically we came up with this compromise because I was like, it's gonna like it's tricky because like I don't want it to look like we had done a video that was pro shot, like one of our friends who are kind of successful videographers now. They had some downtime and they wanted to do a video because they didn't really do too many music videos, and so we did one for the song called Immortalized.
Okay.
And I like the way that video turned out a lot, but I was like, I think we should try to stick to our like DIY kind of roots.
Hmm.
And so we filmed it on a phone, like on an iPhone. And I think that like you can kind of tell that it's shot on an iPhone, but I think that like part of the allure of that video is that it's kind of like lo-fi. And the
I
song
love the
itself is like
car
a little
sequence.
lo-fi.
Like I love how like the cars,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
sequence. Like, yeah, and I mean you use the city, like, and that's like, why
Yeah.
not? Right.
Right. I mean, it's the most video photographed city, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I like too, like the living room shots where you would like rotate the camera and it would end up like him singing.
Yeah.
Like, it was, yeah, it
Yep.
was Well done. Yeah.
He did a good job. He went on. The video that we're working on now, though, is insane, and that's all
Okay.
I'll say.
All right.
It's crazy. We were shooting last night as well, and I think that the vision on this one is insane. It knocks it out of the park.
You're gonna blow up the internet, aren't you?
I hope. I hope.
so yeah, so let's talk about then like this. So when can we expect some new music then?
That's hard to say
Okay.
because well, first of all, we want to make like so since now it's pretty much just me doing the admin side of the band and like the financial side of the band.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that this record is like I don't because like we are signed to a label, a small label, but it is a label, and I don't want to feel rushed about putting it out.
Mhm.
So we're gonna just wait, gonna keep like we're in the mixing stage now, and just gonna keep cranking it until it is done. Hopefully it will be out, you know, spring. I don't know. Never done a spring release. Every release we've done has been in
In the
the
fall.
winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, fall, winter. So I think that maybe a spring would be cool or a summer. We'll see. I don't know. I right now I'm like really like preoccupied. I really like playing shows now. So that's kind of the thing that is inspiring me to work, you know.
Well, and it seems like too in like this day and age now, like bands you had like it used to be you could record an album and then you would tour. And
Yes.
now it's you have to tour to be able to afford to record the
Right.
album. And then
Right.
you're still touring while you're recording because it's just so expensive to do everything now.
It's kind of interesting because I've seen the music industry like, the music industry has
Evolve.
definitely shifted
Yeah.
in such a fast way. I think it's because of TikTok personally, which is why I've shifted a lot of the primary my primary focus on social media is TikTok these days, which is funny because I don't know, it's kind of a waste of time, but it's also not because it is serious. Like it's a very serious platform that people like there's plenty of bands that I know and like friends that just don't care for it. But I'm like, you're losing out on a lot of new eyes and ears,
Yeah.
But the industry shifted heavily because of TikTok. And I've been seeing bands blow up, get signed to majors, and then lose it all because of TikTok as well, because of the fact that like it is like a viral thing, which is not,
It's
there's an
fleeting.
argument, it's
Yeah.
fleeting.
Yeah.
So finding your audience on there and trying to divert them into a real fan base is hard, but it's not impossible in my opinion. Like I've the greatest successes that Glom has had recently, I attribute to TikTok, like having those numbers and having that like core,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Different reach, right?
different.
Yeah.
It's different, all organic too, which is why it's crazy. It's like no ads, like the ads on there are very expensive. So, um, you have a video that cracks 10,000 views. It's like that's a lot of people that you didn't have to like juice the app for, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. I've not joined TikTok, and you're right. I'm probably wrong in doing it, and I probably should, but yeah, I don't know. It just feels a little empty, and maybe that's just my age, like I just
It's definitely a little empty on there. People are more unhinged on there than on any other platform, but that
yeah,
works in your favor in a lot of ways
right.
because some of those people, while they are unhinged, they like what they like, and
Right.
so you can find a really, you
Attentive
never
audience.
know,
Yeah.
you might be on there and someone might, like for example, you make a video on there talking about your podcast, you find someone that will listen to that podcast for your podcast forever because of the
10
dumb
second
video
clip,
that you
right?
posted, you know? And that's that I think that's a really inspiring thing. That's why it's like, and also what's crazy about it, like a lot of people that I know personally will be like, like it's not like reaching that many people. Like my videos like stop at like 200 views or like 100 views. And I'm like, dude, that's still 10 people, that 10 to 30 people that saw that video. Maybe even if you want to like do a one for one, like that's 200 people that saw your video and are thinking about or have seen you now. That's like thinking about it, like you play a show and like, you play a show and there's 80 people there. That's a lot of people. And then so you think about it, you on the internet, it's like you got to equate it because it is the same thing. Because for a lot of these people that are on their TikTok users, like they're um that's their venue, you know. So
It's very lucrative too. Very,
I'm
very,
pro TikTok heavy.
yeah. Shout out TikTok.
That's
So
right.
let's talk about like, because again, this is kind of something that's changed as well, like streaming, like you
Right.
used to be able to release an album and that was good enough. And now I feel like it's more single driven now, where bands
Right.
are, especially indie bands, like yourselves, you release 3 or 4 songs and then it's an EP, or it's,
Right.
3 or 4 songs, and then it's like an 8 song album or something.
Right.
Is that tough when you're kind of more of an album based band, or are you okay with being like a band, just a listener listening to song 8 off the album?
Um, I'm an album guy. I like albums. Like I will listen to. I miss the days of when people would be like, "Oh, let's just listen to this record all the way through," you know. And like within my friends, like we still do that, but a lot of people don't consume music that way. So I feel like, I would argue that most people don't. So it's important to, as a musician, it's important to acknowledge that and be okay with it because I don't know, for example, like with Glom songs on like Spotify, um, I mean, most people that listen to Glom songs only listen to the one Glom song or like listen to like the song Matches or whatever. So that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I feel like I'll still make records as if they're records. Obviously, the economy online is a singles economy, which is neither here nor there, but you
Right.
got to do what
Got to
that's the
play
way
the
it
game,
is.
right?
You got to play the game. So like this next record, I want to do 8 singles on an 11 song album. So
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Got to do what you got to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about upcoming tour dates, and then we'll kind of wrap up. So we
Cool.
have October 29th, which is, yes, Sunday night, right?
Yep. This
Uh,
Sunday.
Union Pool
Yep.
in Brooklyn.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh,
It's in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
okay.
It is with a band that is a hero of mine, a personal hero of mine. They're called Spiritual Cramp. They're from San Francisco, California, and I saw them play in 2017 at a Chinese restaurant in Baltimore, and now they've been on the blow up, and so it's it's nice. It's nice to play with them, and
Okay.
I'm very grateful.
Nice. And then you're playing November 10th, my birthday.
There you go.
Berlin Under A
Yep.
in Brooklyn as well. Talk about that.
That's in Manhattan,
Oh,
actually.
that's
That's a
Manhattan. Okay.
Manhattan show. Yeah. So I like playing the small venues in Manhattan. Much I prefer that to playing like the Mercury Lounges or the Bowery kind of stuff. Like those are
Webster
like the bigger
Hall.
room.
Yep.
Well, we've never played Webster Hall. That'd be sick. But
What's the other one?
Hammerstein. That's not,
No,
I guess it's not
not
even there
Hammerstein,
anymore.
Not Regency, something like that. We saw Pete Yorn there. Oh, the Gramercy.
Yeah, Gramercy.
Yeah,
Gramercy Theater.
Gramercy's a pretty cool spot. Yeah.
Those are big rooms that I would love to play. But I'm going to tell you right now, playing in New York is very hard. It's not, you know, I used to make this joke when we first started playing shows out of town where it was like every show out of town is better than every show we play in New York. But a lot of times it is kind of true because people in New York, it's a lot harder to get them to come to a show because there's so much going on. Um, every night of the week there's a show in New York, as opposed to like in Baltimore where it'd be like, oh, like there's like two shows a week and they're both good shows because Baltimore's a slower city, or in DC where it's like at 9:30 club there's a show, there's three shows that week at 9:30 club,
Right.
and they're all bangers because it's a slower city, it's a not yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
playing in New York is hard. That's like where I'm going with this. So that's why I like playing the small rooms, because it's like much more intimate. And I feel like I consider those shows, like I will always say yes to a show like that with like our friends,
Mhm.
like friends bands and stuff like that, purely because like I consider it more like stand-up comedy, in the sense that like like you see, like living in New York, one of the coolest things about living in New York, in my opinion, is that you can see like famous comedians all the time, because during the week what they do is just work on their material at small clubs.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends they go on tour, and then the special comes out, and so you see like a special, and it's you end up have seen the special multiple times because you've seen this comedian at a small club like three times, and I think that that's really cool, and that's like an inspiring thing for me musically, because I like to see how they write jokes, because I feel like I translate that into how I write songs. And so
So who are your
um
favorite comedians that come around, like that you've seen like in these clubs?
well, I live across the street from from an alt comedy club, and
Okay.
there was a string where we were going to see. I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Pera.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we'd see Joe Pera. Joe Pera has a weekly show there, or had a weekly show there, and we would see. I mean, it'd be like crazy people there. It was Joe Pera and this guy Dan Licata, who was a SNL writer that um host the show,
Okay.
and they would have like, man, they'd have crazy comedians come through. Like one time, like the last show we went to was a secret headliner, but it was Eric Andre, and that was kind of funny to see him perform. And there was like probably 30 people there, and it's like, dude, it's like like legitimate celebrity.
Yeah.
And then another one that it was like, I don't know, like Sarah Squirm is another one that would come through, SNL person. And then um I mean, one of my all time, my favorite comedian probably is Connor O'Malley. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's
Oh,
very,
okay.
he's not for everyone. I will warn you.
Okay.
So, not from like an edgy perspective, but his videos are like pretty like intense. Like he primarily does like kind of characters, and his characters are not for everyone. I will
Okay.
say
All
they're
right.
just a little intense, but I appreciate his comedy a lot.
Right.
Um, I don't know. There's a lot of random people. Like, for example, we went to like across, like there was a Comedy Bang Bang show there, and we went because my girlfriend's obsessed with Comedy Bang Bang, and we went to the Comedy Bang Bang show, and they didn't like list who the people would be at the show, but it was like crazy. Like Adam Scott was there, and like Jason Manzukis. I don't know if you know who that is, but yeah, it's like those people just walking down the stage, and you're like, wow, like I'm like 50 feet away from like Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec. Like this is insane.
Yeah.
And like that's like a New York thing, you
Yeah.
know.
That never gets old though, right? I mean,
No, not at all.
yeah.
It's crazy. Like it's like there's a situation where it's like, you kind of get desensitized to it. Like especially like you see like, there in my neighborhood, like the neighborhood next to mine, there's like a bunch of celebrities that live, like Steve Buscemi, or like um Maya Hawke. Like I've seen her like a couple times, and Ethan Hawke, like, but like a New York thing, which I appreciate, is like just leave them alone, But like, so you get kind of desensitized to it. It's like, oh, this is like a fucking celebrity, but whatever. Like they're working too,
Right. They
you
eat
know.
bagels and coffee too, right?
Yep, exactly. And that's why I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. And then the final show, December 15th at the
Yep.
Atlantis.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of Seth Hurwitz,
Oh
IMP,
yeah.
their new venue, right?
It's crazy. So, I got to see. When we played there. So we've played at 9:30 Club 3 times now. So the first time was with Block Party. We opened for Block Party, and
Wow.
then we opened for Thievery Corporation, and then the last time was Explosions in the Sky. And the previous two times, the Atlantis wasn't ready yet. And so I really wanted to see what it looked like because I'm obsessed with DC hardcore and like that kind of stuff, like from when I was a kid, and like all the footage of like, the minor threat shows or like whatever
Brains. Yeah.
were at that 930 club, not the current 930 club. And so the last show, um, with Explosions in the Sky, I was outside the venue, and then like Seth, I went to high school with Seth Hurwitz's kids, so like I know one of them, and he was like, yo, like, you want to come see the Atlantis? And I was like, yeah, let's go. And he took me over there, and it's crazy. Like, they have the original. This is super nerd stuff, but the original ticket counter from they like saved it somehow, like from the original 930 club. They just had it in storage, and so it's like the front of the venue is like the original ticket counter, and that's where like the person was taking tickets to go see like any of the bands, like the heyday of the 930 club in the 80s. And you'd see like, I don't know, and like the event, like the stage is an exact replica of the stage, and it's the same proportions, same everything, dimensions, and that they even have the same tiles. Like, it's the same, it was the tiles from the original 930 club. Like, they saved everything, and so it's really cool that it's back.
So why did they call it Atlantis? Do you know?
So the building, he told me a little bit about this. So the 930 club was on I think F and Ninth Street in DC,
Okay.
and the building was called the Atlantis. When they bought, or when they leased the building, it was called the Atlantis. And so when they got this new venue, they named it the Atlantis because of the building.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
So
It's gonna be a cool show. It's definitely gonna be a cool one.
yeah, something to look forward to, and it'll be here before you know it, right before the holidays, right?
I know. I'm nervous about it.
So have you done any like festivals, any like South by or Tree Fort or anything like that, where like these up and coming, like where you get to like kind of showcase?
No, so this will be the first year that I've applied for South by. We have never applied before. Tree Fort, like, it's never been like a thing. I've never like been drawn to do that, but this year I was feeling inspired, so sent it off. I don't know, haven't heard anything back yet. Probably not going to do it. I'm not going to get it, but
Well, I will tell you this, my friend. I have done South by now. This will be year 6 upcoming. We do a whole Road to South by series where we feature bands that are like playing it.
nice.
I love the city of Austin. And like that's
Me
part of
too.
why I started this podcast, was about music exploration and like bands like you, that don't have a
Yeah,
voice, in the mainstream. And so South by for me, it like you will never hear me say anything bad about it other than the pay for the artist, just like in
right,
everything else. Like it's
right.
ridiculous. And they did raise it this year. I think it's 350 now they paid to a band. It
It used to
used
be
to be
like,
only, I think, 200 or 150. It was
right,
ridiculous.
right,
350 still absurd because it's so costly to go there. But
right.
if you need help or if you need anything, man, like let me know, because and I can guarantee you, if you don't get picked, it will be a travesty, because you guys you're talented enough. Like the songs speak for themselves. Like you
Well,
definitely
I
should,
appreciate it.
yeah, you definitely should be accepted. I would be very surprised if you're
I
not.
wonder when they're gonna send the email back.
Well, they announced that just the first round so far. That's 150 bands that they announced so far. There'll be 3,000 total. So
Right.
they do like announcement basically like once a month. So the next announcement will be in November, then they'll do one in December.
Nervous.
Basically,
I'm
yeah. So
nervous.
you got time. No worries.
Right. Well, fair
But
enough. I'm excited. Well, I hope it happens. It'll be fun.
yeah. So anything else then? Any other tour plans then for the spring, or
That's it for
basically
now. That's
okay,
it for
just some
now. I feel like we've been receiving a lot of our shows have been coming in last minute. Like, for example, with the White Reaper show, we didn't get added on until like the week before.
okay.
So and the Explosion in the Sky show was not added until 2 weeks before.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the life now. So we'll
Yeah.
see. Could be something really cool coming, but you never know.
Right. Well, this has been great, man. I appreciate
Yeah,
you taking the time. Best of luck. Yeah, and hopefully we get to see it South by, or hopefully beforehand, my friend.
for sure. Thank you for having
Absolutely.
me.
Yeah. Audience, make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Follow our social media pages. Follow Glom as well. There you
Oh
go.
yeah. There you go. All right. Goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, enjoy the show this weekend. Are you guys doing anything for are you gonna dress up, or are you
I
a
don't
big
know.
Halloween guy?
I like Halloween, but I've never had a good costume, so I don't know.
Okay. No
Never done a
costume
good.
on stage. That just doesn't work.
No, 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 no. I can't do that. Not yet, anyway. Not yet.
All right. Well,
All
guys,
right.
I've been Dog. You've been great. This is the Music Lab podcast. Hell yeah, man.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, brother. Take care.
You too. Goodbye.
Bye.